What's up, guys? Just gonna wait a few seconds. We're waiting on BLA. Give me 1 second. What's up, Jason? Tommy? Welcome to the chat, y'all. Just 1 second, y'all. Yo, Drubo, what's up, man? Just want to say thanks for coming in and joining me today on this wonderful Sunday. All right. All right. We are just waiting a few more minutes. Oh my gosh, everyone's here. So many people here already. I'm so happy. That's awesome. Okay, if the audio is too loud or is too low, please let me know in the chat. This is the time to do it. We are just waiting for our friend and fellow YouTuber based lit analyzer who's going to be joining me today on this wonderful afternoon, where we will be going over the very divisive work. Here we go. Yo,
what up?
What's going on, man? How are you?
What's going on, bud? What's up?
How are you today, my friend?
Pretty good, man. Are we rolling?
Yes, we're rolling.
Oh, we're live.
Yeah. No pressure though. No pressure though, man. It's very chill. We're just chilling. Yeah, man. Me and my buddies, we just actually got finished watching the film just a few seconds ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I watched it again earlier today.
Oh, nice. Hell yeah. How was that? How was that experience?
It was good. I mean, it's good. I don't know about good. Give me 1 second here.
Sure. Take your time, man.
Okay.
First off, I just want to say thank you guys for all of y'all in the chat right now, and for all of y'all who might be listening later on. If you guys are listening in the future, my name is Darth Moda, and this is my YouTube channel where we go over all sorts of things as far as media is concerned, including literature, novels, films, all sorts of stuff. And I say thank you for coming. And also, I just want to give a big shout out to Baselit Analyzer for being here today, joining me on my officially first stream. And really awesome of you to be joining me today. I really look up to you in a lot of ways, and I really enjoy your content. If you want, you could give yourself a little intro for those of you who might not know Baselit Analyzer. He's a great channel. So go ahead, Based.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it. Baselit
No problem.
Analyzer at YouTube. Good to see everybody in the chat there. I see Jason. I see Tommy, Moldy Apple, everybody. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think this will be a good one. I just rewatched the film today, and a lot to say.
Yeah, so. There's a lot to it. Yeah.
yeah. But
okay.
Happy to be here on your first one, man.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah, there we
Sounds
go.
good to me. If anybody in the chat has any issues with if you guys are noticing anything, please let me know in the chat, and we'll try to make adjustments as we go along. All right, so I figure we could just start off like right off the bat with just going over maybe like a basic structure. I don't know how long you're planning on going on. I understand you're a busy guy and you have other things you have to be doing. So if at any time you need to go, or if like like I was thinking maybe like an hour, 45 minutes. If you want to go longer, we could always go longer or shorter. It's up to you, man.
Yeah,
And
we'll
then I
we'll take it.
figure,
We'll take it as it comes. Jay's going on at 7
okay.
here to talk about Dune 2, and I want to be there for that. So
Oh,
Dune
yeah, yeah,
Dune
yeah.
2, I'm interested in it because Dune 2 is getting. I've had a bunch of people send me this thing. Send me about stuff about
Right.
the new movie coming out. People who'd seen it already yesterday when it came out and asking me what I thought about it. So I got to see it for myself. I want to hear what Jay has to say and then see it for myself because you can never. One thing about this is you can never trust the way that reviewers review the film, like in
Right.
terms of
Right. Yeah.
like in their blogs or their like reading the New Yorker's review of Dune 2. You never know how it's going to be. So
It's like the whole thing where like everyone's a critic, at heart or whatever that people say. Everyone's
I
got a
suppose
perspective,
so.
and yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. But the truth is that not many people know about movies. A lot of people know movies. I
Right.
mean, they've seen movies, but fewer people have seen movies now than ever. But people don't really the people that know the least about movies seem to be the people that write about them for a living, like for MSM, uh,
Right. Right. Right.
online or
Everyone.
because I mean one thing is that when people are reviewing movies, usually it's like when people give book reviews, they usually
Mhm.
they have somebody highlight the passages or they read, they kind of go off of each
Yeah.
other. Very
The
few people
spark
do deep
notes.
dives. Yeah. Yeah. So that doesn't give you that doesn't really give you any it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give you any substance. So I
Right.
think it's important to I don't know. I'll see for myself how it is and hear what Jay has to say about it.
No,
But
I
I'm
totally
looking
agree.
forward to it. Yeah.
Me
Because there
personally, like,
well, I was gonna say
no, go
there's
ahead.
not
Go ahead.
there are so few movies made now, and actually good movies. And
Right. I agree.
I grew up watching movies, and that was just a staple of life. It wasn't like a thing. You just what's up, leaves of grass? Yeah, you just I just watched movies a lot, and I still do. But now there's a lot of competition with in terms of people's stamina for their ability to understand longer form, especially with reading books.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, I didn't reread the book for The Exorcist, and I'm sure we're gonna get into that. We can talk a little bit about the book, but
We could talk a little bit about
I,
the book. Yeah.
I actually read the book. This is gonna sound weird, but I read the book. I spent the night at a friend's house in 4th grade, and I remember this
Okay.
very clearly. We were in his like sunroom at night. We were watching a movie, and his dad had a big bookcase, and I went up to the bookcase, and there was a copy of The Exorcist right there, and I was thumbing
Oh
through it.
man.
And I was looking for the passages to see if, the book had the same, like, the horrible parts, the cuss words and stuff that the
Right.
movie because I'd seen the movie in 3rd grade, and I ended up reading
Oh
the
man.
entire book. Yeah, I read the entire book standing there, looking for this stuff, and I'm not gonna reread I the content is such that I'm
It's
not gonna
dark. It's
reread the
so
book.
dark. It's so
Yeah,
dark, dude. It's
it's
like not even worth it. Once you read it once, you don't even have to. It leaves a mark on you. Is all I should say.
yeah,
That's a really interesting story. My personal story with the material in general is I saw the movie when I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade as well.
uh-huh,
Like on TV, and I remember like my mom and my dad walked in and watched me watching it. And
uh-huh,
at first they were upset, and then we all started watching the movie together. And I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay, this is interesting." Uh, but of course, a lot of the content was, exited out during the transition to television.
mm.
So I didn't
Oh,
see the
you
whole film until I was much older. You know what I mean?
right,
And
okay,
then I got into the whole different versions, and now I really enjoy watching the director's cut, which is the one I just watched with my
yeah,
friends.
mhm,
Now, as far as the book, I read the book while I was actually having surgery on my knee about 3 years ago. It was the first
mhm,
time I read the book. And it was funny because I was reading the book and I got to the part where she's in the hospital and having all the operations done on her. And
yeah,
I felt like I was inside the book at that point because I'm reading it in a hospital, on a gurney.
yeah,
It was very interesting. Um,
yeah,
but anyway, uh, I, I, I can't say I love this work, but I think the fact that it's so culturally relevant makes it relevant in today's talk about different types of media and the effect
Mhm.
that older media has on even cultural today. I think
Yeah.
that as far as the effect that it had on horror films in general, I mean, every other horror film is a possession story now.
Mm.
And we can kind of get into the sort of what brought William Peter Blatty to write The Exorcist in the first place. From what I understand, it came to him after as soon as he was done watching the film Rosemary's Baby, and he was
Mhm.
actually very upset with how that film ended. With it's a very bleak film if you look at
Mhm.
Rosemary's Baby and compared to The Exorcist, and he felt
Yeah.
that there should be a movie where God wins end. And so that sort of drove him to write this novel. And he wrote it with the intent on having it converted into a screenplay, which he eventually
Mhm.
did. And he actually wrote it for a specific actress who's the character of Chris McNeil, the mother, is based off of.
Mhm.
I forgot her. I don't have her name on hand right now, but she was one of the first people to actually read
Right.
that novel.
Who is it? Brenda. It's not Brenda Blethyn. It's
Ah, geez, I have her
she's
name in here somewhere.
she's
It's
in
like
Requiem for a
Mick
Dream.
something. Yes. Well, that's Ellen Burstyn. That's the name of the actress who plays
Mhm.
um
Yeah, is
her.
that what you mean? Yeah, Ellen Burstyn. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying that the character of Ellen Burstyn's character, Chris McNeil, is based off of an actual Hollywood actress.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Who?
yeah. Her name is Jesus Christ. Yeah, I can't. Is based off of Shirley MacLaine.
Oh,
If you know Shirley MacLaine.
from of course,
Her-
Shirley
yeah,
MacLaine from Richmond, Virginia, sister of Warren
right.
Beatty. Mhm. Yeah.
Exactly. Very good. Yeah. So you might know a little bit more about her than I do.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research going into the background here, but apparently he was drunk off of his rocker,
Mhm.
completed the manuscript for the first draft, and he came to her door and knocked on the door and shoved it into her chest and says, "You got to read this. It's going to be your next star. You're going to be the star of this film." And
Uh-huh.
of course, we know that Ellen Burstyn eventually
Yeah.
became the lead of that character.
Well,
But
probably
anyway,
probably best how it worked out, I suppose.
yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, this
yeah.
is it's a bleak movie, and you can see obvious parallels with Rosemary's Baby. I mean, the '70s is an interesting
Hmm.
time because of
Oh yeah.
I've done streams on alter cinema and how the '70s movie industry changed and sort of morphed into the '80s. But it's interesting that the '70s had kind of three through lines with movies. One was that movies shifted into auteur cinema. So the director really had artistic control in
Right.
many of the big films. And this is like we think of Paul Schrader films with Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford
Right.
Coppola films,
The American New
uh,
Wave, essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a number of them. And then also there was a more of a focus on sort of regular, everyday looking people. And a lot of people call this ethnic cinema, but you see this
Mm.
mainly with The Godfather. But
Right. Right.
this one's kind of this one's this and Rosemary's Baby, which is end of the '60s, are kind of variations of that because the characters they're sort of a mix of characters and they're supposed to be. I mean, one of the things in The Exorcist is that the characters are rich. They're rich and famous.
Right.
And
Right.
and
Yeah. They're like
that's one of
Hollywood
the
royalty.
yeah, that's one of the things that people forget about the movie is that it's really it's like a meta movie because
Hmm.
we have an actress who is playing an actress in
Right.
and
Yeah.
then filming a film in the film,
Who's based off of an actual actress, which is a
right?
whole
Who's
nother
based
level to it.
right, and
That's crazy.
that in terms of the style and in terms of the content, is supposed to reflect the fact that there are layers within layers, and that really is what gives us
Right.
the crux of how Reagan comes to be possessed and what it means
Hmm.
to pull her possession out of her because there
Right.
are so many people involved. I mean, one of the things in the possession scenes is that we hear so many voices, and the darkest part of this movie, but well, that's hard to say. I mean, the darkest part is the darkest part, but
Right.
but the thing I really took a lot from listening to Rob Eggers analyses of this movie and years ago, and one of the things that really struck me this time going back and watching it is how prevalent the background characters are in terms of the possession. And
Yes.
there's
Yes.
a whole
Yes.
thing
Yes.
going on with Reagan.
With the
Um,
secretary, right?
well,
Like,
the secret,
do you notice the secretary's role in it all? She's
no,
so
this,
in the background at all the most crucial moments. Like,
mm,
how did the crucifix get in there? How does Reagan know about God, even though her mother is
yeah, the
uh
crucifix isn't
you
her
know
though.
it's
Yeah,
right. Okay.
the crucifix is Burke. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
I'm gonna
Okay.
get it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get into that as we go. It's pretty dark, but
Okay. So let's
the
get into it then. Um, the beginning of the novel and the beginning of the movie begins with Father Marin, not Father
mhm,
Merrick, which is a name that I saw appear on many articles that I saw. Some for some reason they think his name is Merrick, and it's I don't know why people have written that down and published that and got it published. But anyway, he begins in Iraq and he's
mhm,
dressed all in khaki and it looks as though he's like a part of the background. He is literally like he's almost like a father time type
mhm,
character and that he is essentially the landscape, he embodies it. He's old and Max von Sydow's makeup makes him look like this dusty relic and he's
yeah,
digging through the dirt. And not and the dirt and the landscape is symbolic because of the place he's in, the former kingdom of Nineveh, which is a biblical place, and he's digging and trying to come up with these relics. And then later on, the two of the priests are talking about him, and they said he's so old. And then the other priest says, "Well, he might be old, but he's still old enough to go digging up tombs." You know,
right,
like he's
yeah,
a very like spryly like active person, especially for his age.
yeah.
Um,
Max von Sydow was like 42 when he filmed this movie, which
It
is
was right
crazy.
after Seventh Seal, right? It was very close to after he filmed Seventh Seal, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the Seventh Seal was way earlier. I think.
Oh,
I
was
mean,
it?
this is 73. Yeah, but but the point is that he's 42, and they really did. I mean, he really is great because you believe that he's old. In fact, when I was rewatching it, I was thinking, like, is this Max von Sydow at the very beginning of the movie, the archaeologist? I
Right.
mean, he's
Yeah.
so old. He's and
Right.
the makeup is fantastic, but but yeah, the beginning of the film is especially the thing that I would really point out with the movie is the sound design in this
It's so good.
because
Oh, it's
all the
so
way
good.
through the Iraqi scenes, because it was filmed in Iraq. The all through those scenes, the sound of it is a chaotic din.
It's like a
Uh,
hum, like a buzz.
no, it's hellish. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be a hellish sound. So so when he is so first we begin with the sun, right? Is the first image in the
Yeah.
movie is a
It's like a
blinding
red
sun.
sun.
Yeah, and we see the desert and we see all these people digging. It's sort of later Indiana Jones style, and they're digging, and then um we hear wind, the sound of wind, and that becomes more prevalent as the scene goes on. But when the kid runs to him and tells him, they found something at the base of the mountain, and he goes over and he looks at it and he pulls it out and he finds the head of a statue of Pazuzu. It's like an
It's a
evil eye, but
and it's an emerald. It's also green, which is significant. The fact that it's like a lime green, and that stands
yeah.
out, I think.
Well, it's what they later say in the movie is evil against evil. But I mean, this is brings to mind animism, an evil attaching to objects, and
Right.
the fact that he
Right.
finds it in the earth, he finds it
It's
in
not
a
pagan
rock
idolatry,
inside.
man.
What'd you say?
It's
What?
pagan idolatry, man.
Right. Yeah. No. It's satanic. It's satanic idolatry.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, yeah.
And he knows exactly what it is when he finds it. And we later learn that this is kind of following him because he's just done the last exorcism, and that, yeah, as Lisa Grass points out there, Pazuzu is a demon of the wind. This also occurs in Hereditary, where there's a demon of the
Yeah.
northwest wind.
There's so much connections between
Amon.
those two films. You can tell there's so much inspiration that Ariaster took from Friedkin and
Yeah,
just the imagery and the way he does the backgrounds. It's very, very similar,
Yeah, it really is an all-encompassing film, and there's great care taken in this movie with all of the characterization, all the imagery is complete, all of
I
the
agree.
sound in the movie. And when he finds the demon head and he walks through the marketplace, you notice that he starts seeing figures, and it's like he's haunted.
Yes.
He sees a guy hammering on an anvil, and then he looks, and the guy has one eye. He's got his
Hmm.
left eye, and that's supposed to indicate that not only did he find this thing inside the earth, but it's like he's in hell at the base of the
Right.
volcano. With
Well,
and there's a lot of
he's in battle with Satan. So he is the person he's sort of like Dante. He's like this warrior Dante who goes into hell to conquer Satan. He's not just like a visitor. He's there to like fuck shit up. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like he's a
I'm not
badass,
sure if
like a
that's what
spiritual
happens in
badass.
Dante's Inferno. Yeah, that doesn't happen in
No,
Dante's Inferno.
I'm not saying that that happens in Dante. I'm saying if you could
Yeah.
imagine a sort of like a
Mm,
warrior style Dante. Like imagine
yeah,
a Dante who's who
well,
goes in and does battle.
what he does do is he climbs the mountain. He climbs a mount later on in the
Right.
scene. He almost gets run over by another woman with one, weird eyes. Goes up to the top of this mountain and he
Yes.
sees the statue of Pazuzu, and he's facing it.
Right.
And it's what's interesting is that they both look larger than life, but the statue is the same size as him. It's like a human sized statue. And the
Right.
parts about the demon are that he has demon wings. He's a demon of the wind. He's got he's the phallic symbol, and and it's as above, so below. So he's got one hand pointing up and another pointing down.
Right.
And then we hear the sound of the wind, and this is to indicate that this is gonna travel. And what is really interesting is that later on, um, Lee J. Cobb, who plays the police
The
detective,
detective. Right.
when he's looking at the
Oh, he
foot of the
talks about
stairs.
drafts, and he's talking about how drafts get in and it's not healthy, right?
Well, no,
Like,
when he's looking at the stairs and looking at the staircase, he goes down and he finds an object and he picks it
oh,
up,
it's the relic. It's the relic from
and it's the relic.
Iraq.
It's the relic.
Yeah, how did
So
it get
which
there? Like, it doesn't make sense.
right? Well, I think what that indicates is that Burke had this.
Mm,
Burke is the film director who died, who was thrown out of the window,
mm,
right, and who lands
right.
at the bottom of the stairs. So he had this, and that's we'll get to that. We'll get to how that ties in,
I
but
Okay.
yeah. So
I
so
think what's
he
interesting about that scene with the statue, where Marin is looking at the statue, is everything around the statue is
uh
is destroyed. But for
right,
some reason, that statue still exists. Like it's
yeah,
still erect, even though everything around it. I mean, it might not mean anything, but I think
yeah,
it's very interesting. It's obviously a set piece.
hmm
It's obviously the Hollywood has to be there for the sake of the shot, but I think it might also hold some relevance as far as subtext. The idea that evil lives on within men, and it's something
hmm
that's existed for a long time. You could talk about Blood Meridian and the Judge, but that's a whole nother conversation. Um, I think what's really interesting about the Burke Dennings character is that at one point in the novel he's tearing pieces of the script that he's writing and eating it, and to me that seemed like almost like an LSD reference, like eating paper, and then later on you see, we find out that he actually rented out the book on occultism that Reagan that's found in Reagan's room somehow. Reagan
yeah,
sneaks in. This is all in the novel. This isn't in the book,
mm,
but we know that Burke Dannings did check out that book on occultism
mm,
because his name is in the back of the binding there.
hmm
Uh, so
yeah,
that's also very interesting, and um, I think in certain drafts of the screenplay, I think they might have included stuff like that, but eventually they took it out. Freaking with his final
right.
cut and all that.
Well, Burke is often forgotten in the watching of the movie, because he's such a
Right.
background character. I mean, when we cut to when we cut to America and we see Georgetown, we pan across the
Mm,
Georgetown Bridge. We're in Georgetown, and we're right next to Georgetown. We see they're filming a movie, and what's her name? But it's not Brenda Bleth. I just said her name. What's her name?
Ellen Burstyn. Ellen
Burstyn. Gosh, Ellen
Yeah.
Ellen Burstyn is talking to the director. There's a huge crowd. They're watching the filming, and of course, what's she involved in? She's playing an actress who is involved in a protest.
And they're trying to tear the university down. Literally, that's what the student protest is about.
Yeah. So she runs up the stairs, and we see that Burke is this drunken Englishman, and we see
Burke on a lot of levels. I like Burke. I don't know if people like him or not, but I like him.
I don't think you're gonna like him after this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're not gonna.
Go ahead. Swing me then.
Well. Okay. So Burke, I don't know. We'll kind of get to it as we keep going, but the important thing is that we see the priest, and this isn't Father Marin. This is the younger priest. Is it
Karis?
Who's the? Yeah. What's his name? Karis. Yeah. So Karis is one in many, and he's kind of laughing at this. He's watching. He seems like a normal guy. We learned that he's a former boxer. He runs.
Psychiatrist to Jesuits, which is an interesting thing.
Yeah, he's a psychiatrist, and then we see him go. We see him in New York, and he's walking on the street, and he goes up a brownstone. Notice in that scene when he's walking down the street that what you notice is the sound difference. The sound in the first scene was this hellish din of anvils and sort of vulcanized like forges, and then we hear the sound of kids playing, but they're destroying this. They're like on top of this car, and then he walks upstairs into this terrible brownstone, which looks like it's like in the East Village or something, and then he goes in and he sees his mother.
It smells like mold. It looks like it's a moldy apartment, like.
Yeah, and he goes in and he sees his mother, who is a lonely a Sicilian woman, listening to.
She's disabled,
Italian radio. She's and she says to him, that he says to be careful, going up and down the stairs, which is going to play a part later in the movie. But she says, "Don't put me in that home. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving this thing for no place." And it's interesting that she uses the double negative there, because when she says, "I'm not leaving for no place," she kind of ends up in no place, because we hear her voice coming from hell. But and then we see him come back. He goes to the bar. He's talking to one of the priests. This occurs in Exorcist 3, same thing with George C. Scott, where he goes to a bar and he's talking with the guy. They're hanging out, and he's like, he tells the guy at the bar that he thinks he's losing his faith, which is okay. Of course he is. They always do this in the fucking movies.
I mean,
and then kind of jumping around here, but we see later that his mother is in the asylum, and she's tied down in the bed. She's got restraints on her arms, and she's
it's so terrifying. It's so terrifying.
Yeah, and when he's in the subway, a guy asks him for money, and he kind of scoffs, and then he's when he walks into the thing, like people are trying to claw at him. They're always trying to claw at him.
Yeah,
to talk to him, which makes sense. I mean, he's they want.
I mean, he's obviously a priest, he's supposed to be this figure of redemption, supposed to be this figure of light, but he's having this crisis of faith. So the light is sort of left him, and you can see it in the way he acts. The actor is so good at portraying.
He is fantastic.
So
he's fantastic. He's so good. He's so good because we forget. I forget watching it that I'm not I forget I'm watching the actor.
And what's cool is because they use real priests. The other priest who gives him his last rites at the end is an actual priest.
Is he?
Yeah. That person was an actual priest that they picked up off of Georgetown, like the campus or the seminary nearby. And a lot of the people in that, especially in that beginning scene with all the movie shots, those are actual nuns and actual priests. So that's why it might feel so real.
Yeah, I was worried about that character watching it because of what happens to Regan, because we see that the mother has a cocktail party. All of the movie people are there, including the director. And one thing that's interesting in this scene is to hear what Burke, the director, how he talks when he's in crowds of people. He constantly is off-putting. He mentions gross things. He's kind of a
Yeah,
shit stirrer.
he's not fun to be
Yeah,
around.
he's a shit stirrer. He goes into the kitchen and he starts berating the I guess the
The
butler.
butler. Yeah.
And when he's talking to the butler, he says, you Nazi bastard, and the butler tries to strangle him. But I forgot to mention before that, when we first cut to the house, we hear like in the movie The Witch, we hear something land on the roof, and we hear sort of dark voices. And she goes downstairs and she tells her wait staff, that there are rats up in the attic, and this is supposed to convey that this later matches how they analyze Reagan when they take her to the hospital, because they're looking at her brain. So the attic of the house is supposed to stand in for the biological Reagan, and that there's something infecting the house from
something's got in from the outside.
Yes,
Yeah.
and of course it's chosen this house, and the reason we have to look for a reason why the demon would land on this house, it's gone into Reagan, and that's because of what is happening in the background with the character and with this Burke character. So what's really interesting is that we meet Reagan, and she's pleasant, she's just a normal child,
she's
but like
a lovely
there's a
person.
scene, yeah, there's a scene where she's first, well, she takes out the Ouija board, so that's the introduction to the demon, right?
Which now, looking back on it, you're, as a modern audience, you're like, oh boy, here we go, fucking Ouija board.
Yeah, she takes out the Ouija board, and she explains to her mother that she says, you have to have two to play, and she says, I do have two to play, and that's alarming. What do you mean? And she says, well, Captain Howdy is my other. So Captain Howdy is the
Pazuzu, right?
Is Danny's it's the Tony to Danny in The Shining, right? This is is her split personality. It's another form of her, but it's also going to be in the form of, this is how Pazuzu comes into her life. So we see that when she puts down the Ouija board, she's looking at it, she asks a question, her mother says, oh, okay, and it immediately slides, right? So there are clearly two people already there, and one is her and the other is some sort of entity that we don't see yet, right? And then the next thing is, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, what the hell is the Ouija board doing in there in the first place? Like, did the mother like buy it and like put it in there and forget about it, or was it there from the previous owner? Like, why is there a Ouija board in the house at all?
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for people to have Ouija boards. Yeah, I mean, especially in the 70s, it's like there's so much occult popularity and stuff in the 70s, and especially with post-boomer, like post-hippie era, esoteric.
Well,
and so
it's interesting that you said that, because the secretary is into like transcendental meditation, manifestation meditation. Her boyfriend is actually the like, when they talk about, when you first see Reagan, she talks to her mom, she's talking about a horse she saw in the park. Well, in the book, the person who's riding the horse is the boyfriend of the secretary, and they talk about how it's a gelding, which is interesting that they would make that demarcation of that. Oh, I wonder, what type of horse it is. Oh, it's a gelding. I don't know why they brought that up, but from my perspective, it's kind of weird, because at another point you see the secretary, when Marin first enters the house, the secretary is dialing a radio. Which to me is like, she's into transcendental meditation, which means she, when you open up your vessel to certain energies, and this, I mean, you don't have to necessarily believe in this, but this is what some people believe, is that when you open up your vessel to certain entities, anything can come in. So who's to say that, the secretary with their transcendental meditation talk didn't sort of Psy-Op Reagan into believing she was quote unquote possessed? You know what I mean? That's one of the possibilities that I feel is like prevalent throughout the novel.
I think it's a possibility, but the reason that she's possessed is because Burke has been creeping on her.
Well, yes, Burke is definitely a creeper. But you also have to maybe think about how, they don't live in that house. You have to remember this. This isn't their house. They're renting it. She's a famous actress.
Mm-hmm.
She has to go to different sets all over the world. The set is in Georgetown, so she got an
Mm-hmm.
rented a house in Georgetown for a certain number of months.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the movie, the maid, the secretary, and the butler all stay at that house.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? So it's almost as if, they're in Washington D.C. You can say what you want about Washington
Mm-hmm.
D.C. There's a parable there with like demons in a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the
Mm-hmm.
White House. We could talk about houses of government, and how currently there are some fucking demons in these places, and that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of relevant because Reagan's father is actually an ambassador to the Vatican in the
Mm-hmm.
novel. She's on the phone, and she says there's a specific hotel in Rome that he stays at. It's a very
The
famous hotel.
Excelsior.
Excelsior, very good. And she says, "Get me the Excelsior, Rome." And you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what the hell is her father doing in Rome of all places? She's a famous actress. She gets invited to the president. She gets invited to have dinner with the president at one point. They're on the cover of essentially what's Life magazine. It's like you said before. They're essentially like almost like Kennedy-esque Marilyn Monroe. Essentially, like if Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy had a kid and their kid got
Mm-hmm.
possessed. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
relevant or not.
I,
Or if
I
you see
I
that.
look at it a little differently. I look at it that this is sort of an eyes wide shut world where they're renting the house
Mm.
just like they're renting Reagan, and
Oh.
there are constant visitors to the place. She what Reagan does throughout is when she talks in the voice of the demon, when she's fully possessed, she's mimicking the things that have been said to her in those situations.
Right.
So one of them is particularly dark, but it indicates that there's more than one person that's doing this to her. Um,
Mm.
and and the absence of the father is the most important thing. It's not really it's almost not important what he does, it's what he doesn't do. So he doesn't call her on her birthday. She sees that the mother's yelling at the phone, trying to get in touch with the father. But she sees she has a conflict between who her father is and then what's done to her. And then
Right.
she latches onto a male figure. And obviously the demon that possesses her is male. I mean, we saw that at the beginning.
Mm.
And and when she first starts to indicate possession is when in a big way is when in the middle of the party she goes downstairs and she loses control of her faculties on the rug.
Yeah.
And it's important what she says because they're all sitting around a piano. That priest is playing the piano, and the priest says something like, "Oh, my idea of heaven is where I'm the nightclub singer, and everybody's watching me and clapping." It was very weird, very weird. But then she comes
Mm.
down and she loses herself on the rug, and then she looks up at one of the guys. Did you notice this? She looks up at one of the guys and she says, "You're going to die up there."
Yeah, it's
And
supposed to be this astronaut, right?
yeah, so
Like
that's
one of
the
the
astronaut
guests.
who's
Yeah.
that astronaut is the main figure in William Peter Blatty's book, The Ninth Configuration, which is
Right.
I did an analysis of that book and
Yep.
and
I
the
watched
movie,
that.
which
Yep.
is yeah, deals with Killer Kane, but that's the astronaut who's saved at the end of the movie. And then this is a kind of a sequel to that. But she says
Interesting.
you're gonna die up there, and she prophesies his death. And then she goes upstairs, and then what we start to see in the first bits of possession are indicative of what's happened to her. The bed is shaking. She's lying on the
Which
bed
is relevant.
as if she's being held down on the bed.
Right.
And then when we finally sort of jumping ahead, when we see her in the hospital scenes are also equally horrific
Oh man,
because
me and my friends watched that, and that was the only scenes where all of us collectively went ew. And then
Mhm,
during the possession parts, we were all laughing and making jokes. But all
mhm,
of us during the hospital scene, we just like somebody was like, "Skip past it, please."
mhm.
It's too horrific to watch that little girl
Well,
go through that.
what they think is that she has a brain lesion
Right.
and that's causing her, hallucinations. And they're looking for a scientific reason for this. And it's not to say that the two are separate. It's almost as if what her the creeper thing and the possession and the brain lesion are all sort of leaked into one thing here. But the
Right.
doctors find that there's no evidence of a brain lesion, but that is only because they tie her down just like the priest mother was tied down, just like Regan was tied down in the bed, or looked like she was tied down with the bed shaking. And then
Mm.
we see the doctor stick a needle in her jugular, and the blood is spurting out of her, which is
Ugh.
which is weird because something is entering her just like the needle is entering where
Yeah.
her voice is,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the noises that we hear are we hear this because they have to take x-rays of her brain. We hear this
It's like loud,
loud
clunky machinery.
clunking. Yeah, it's a loud
Yeah.
clunking machine, and that mimics the first scene, except that's a sharp din,
With
and
the
this is a
hammers.
loud. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a loud,
Wow.
clunking machine, and that's supposed to be, we have something entering her brain. But then we find that there's no medical reason for this, and then they bring up that, it's interesting how the doctors are sitting around this round table talking to the mother, and they're talking to her about how, possession is a lost thing, and it's pretty much gone.
They
They
the end
figured
of
everything out.
By the end of it, they're like, maybe you should consult and maybe get an exorcism. And it's like, what
Uh,
the hell, man? Like that,
no,
like you were just telling me that shit is bullshit, you know?
yeah. Well, yeah, well, and it's not bullshit, and
No.
this is, the movie is incredibly, it really is well done because it is so
One
uncomfortable
thing
and
that I want
so
to say
gross.
about the movie that me and my friends all noticed. Well, actually, I noticed it, and I brought it up, and we couldn't help but notice it as we were watching it. If you watch it closely, there's almost no shot in this movie that doesn't have some red in it.
Mm,
There's like a red clock at one point.
mhm,
There's a sign that's red in the background. If you and a
mhm,
lot of the scenes where they're in the chapel when he's doing the Eucharist,
mhm,
all the walls are red. He's almost
mhm,
dressed all in red, and even the stained glass windows. Jesus and Paul are dressed in red. And I don't think I've ever seen I've never seen Jesus dressed in red before, but in this movie, he's dressed in red on a stained glass window for some reason. And I thought, I don't know if I'm just seeing things or if it's nothing, but I think color has a big thing to do with movies in general.
mhm.
But
Yeah, there's red.
one thing
It's
that I
fall. It's also Halloween. Right, when
right,
we see the mother
also
taking the
Halloween,
walk
yep,
from the
hmm
movie set, the children are running by in Halloween costumes.
and that's when the
You're
score
right.
hits. The great one of the greatest scores, but you only hear it twice in the movie. There's that one
Mhm,
time where she's walking along the road and she's carrying a fall autumn leaf in her hand. She's kind of
mhm,
twisting it around. And then at the end, I think you hear it. Well, do you hear it when Marin rolls up in his cab? Does the
mhm.
score hit at that point too? Because it didn't in the director's cut.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
The director's cut's different. Yeah.
yeah,
There were things that were excised from the original cut and that were put in back in the
right.
director's cut. Um,
Okay, okay.
but
So
but
let's
but yeah, it's red. I mean, it's red for standing for the blood of Christ. I mean, when they're
right,
in the church, it makes sense.
right. And then
It's
when she's
Christian.
being possessed and the vomit's coming out, which is green, you know,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
like the diametric opposite of red. There's no red in the scene. It's almost like there's no, obviously there's no more
Well, the
goodness left in her at that point because she's being fully
Yeah, well, it's
possessed.
that's supposed to be the gross sludge.
Ugh.
Everything that comes out of her mouth is supposed to be repugnant and disgusting. And the
Right.
priest, Marin even says that at the end. He's like, "Don't listen to her. Everything she lies. Everything that the demon says is going to be a lie. And sometimes he
hmm
will mix in truths with lies, but you can't listen to
So
it."
so many great lines in this film. There's so many
Mhm,
great one-liners. Not I'm not talking about the expletives. I'm talking about like the things that the priests say to each other. I think are very strong, and that comes out really really well in the book too.
well,
Um,
where the action really begins is when the mother comes home, and we find that her assistant or whoever has not been watching Regan, and
which is
and
so annoying.
she says, "Who's been watching her?" And she says, "Well, Burke was watching her." And
And she's
so red
visibly upset. The mother knows that Burke's not a good guy and shouldn't be left alone with her daughter.
well, red
She knows
flags.
that.
Mhm, red flags, because the alcoholic film director has been in the bedroom with Regan. And then immediately
So
after
bad.
this is when we find that he's dead. He's dead outside on the steps, and the window's open, and that his head has been turned around completely the opposite way. Now, in Dante's Inferno,
Mm,
uh, demons are seen with their heads turned around. The suit or for soothsay, there's the soothsayers. That's their punishment,
right.
so that they can't see forwards anymore. They have to look backwards. But in this, what's interesting is that Burke has his head turned around, and almost right after this, when Reagan is
We
talking,
see
her head
Reagan.
turns
Yeah.
around completely, and not the 360 degrees. I mean, turning around backwards and speaking
Hmm.
backwards, and she speaks it's Burke speaking.
Right.
Burke, it's
Yeah.
Burke's voice. It's the actor who plays Burke.
So in the
Hold on,
novel, yeah,
hold on.
no, go ahead.
Burke is the one. Burke is the one. It's Burke's voice who says, "Look
Yeah.
what your daughter did."
Yeah. So in the
Look,
novel, when he's describing it, the different manifestations, because in the novel, she talks in many different voices. She talks in Damien's mother's voice to
mhm,
Damien. She talks
yeah.
in Burke Denning's voice to the mother. But when you look at what he writes, what Peter Blatty writes, he always says Burke said this. This is after Burke died. We're in the room with Reagan, and she describes it as Burke is saying this. It's not Reagan imitating Burke. The
Yeah.
verbiage that he uses is significant because later on, um, you know, he never Damien in his thoughts, he never refers to Reagan as the demon until the very end, until
Mhm.
right before he kills her, or sorry, right before he tells the demon to come into him.
Right.
He thinks that demon. All before that, it was the girl, the girl, the girl.
Mhm.
It wasn't until the
Mhm.
very end that he finally accepted the fact that, there is actually something possessing this girl, because I think that's what the main conflict of the story is his crisis of faith, which we see represented through his mother's death.
Yeah.
The death of his mother throws him into this pit of despair. He's having visions of his dead mother going down into the subway, which is
Mhm.
essentially the idea of her going into hell, which
Mhm.
frightens him. He doesn't. He's at one point he says he prays that there is a God to pray, which to me is very agnostic. You're not only are you a priest, but you're a psychiatrist, so you're taking all of the emotional baggage of other priests, and like
Mhm.
we can talk about Catholic priests and the relationship that they have with children and such, but I think that might be going a little bit too far. But I think the idea of a priest struggling in the modern age, I think that's
Mhm.
very relevant in today's society. I think a lot of people are going through that crisis of faith. Um,
Well, I mean, he's loaded with guilt, from what he's
right,
done to his mother or what he hasn't done. And the demon is
right.
using this, against him. And he sees, he has visions in his sleep again, like you said, of her at the top of a foot, at the top of a staircase, right?
And
Like
she
as if
descends
she's
down.
about to
It's
fall, as if she's about to
Yeah.
fall into hell. And that's going to be reflected later with the long staircase in Georgetown where they find Burke at the foot of this thing, and then where he's going to jump out at the end. But I just think it's important to note that everything that she says in this, almost all the lines that she uses, are reflective of her when her brain retreats as a result of the creeper thing. She
Hmm.
is, and this other voice comes out, and the other voice is the voice of the demon, and it's the
Mm.
demon mimics all these other human voices that have done these things to her. So when the mother
Mm.
finds the crucifix in the bed and she asks the other people in the house who put it here, you're supposed to assume that Burke put it there. And because what's the next thing that remember the scene also where Burke is getting kicked out of the house and he says, his line is, "Oh, what's for dessert?" Right? And then it cuts to a shot of Reagan on the bed.
Oh God, that. Oh, that's
Right?
disgusting.
And so then
Uh,
when we see him, like when we find the crucifix, then the mother walks in. What is Reagan doing with it? Ultimate act
oh
of
yeah.
blasphemy. Totally, she's violating
So
herself
bad.
with it, which is to indicate that that's why Burke brought it in, and that's what he was saying to her when he did the thing.
Oh God. So let me just roll it back. So remember how I was telling you about how like William Peter Blatty got the idea by like after he came out of the theater after watching Rosemary's Baby, and it's like he was like pretty much like I can make a better movie that has a better ending that's redeemable. You know, that was
Uh,
essentially the premise for the whole thing. Um,
uh,
as we know, Rosemary's Baby, the director, pretty creepazoid himself. We know what
yeah,
happened to his wife. You
Burke
know,
is a
we just
Roman
talked about
Polanski.
Manson.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's just talk about, you know, the idea that like it's almost as if like if there isn't a curse being put on Burke, which is making him like do all these terrible things to Reagan, like maybe he's part of that cult because there's many times in the novel where essentially the Kinderman character, the detective,
Hmm. Yeah.
the best idea that he can come up with is that okay, there's some sort of satanic cult that's doing black masses. They're
Hmm.
desanctifying religious objects, and
Hmm.
who's to say that that's not true? Who's to say that Burke,
That's what Burke is doing.
the staff at the house, the secretary, even you know Burke and the staff don't really get along, but who's to say that's not an act? Who's to say that, you know, because we know that the butler is hiding a secret from the rest of the characters, that his daughter is like a drug addict, and he doesn't want his wife to know that his drug addict daughter is still alive, so he's hiding her away in an apartment. So that could be symbolic. He's hiding away a young girl, his daughter, who everyone thinks is dead. He's hiding
Mhm.
from even her mother, which is
Mhm.
symbolic because Reagan's being possessed is sort of is getting taken away from her mother. She's essentially dying and being replaced by this demon. Who's to
Mhm.
say that, you know, there isn't some sort of occult, like demonic, like ritual going on that's being the causal, um, essentially the cause of what's going on. Like I feel like Burke's character, he rented that book, the novel on occultism, and somehow
Mhm.
it ends up in Reagan's room. Like I think that's very
Mhm.
suspicious, and the crucifix as well. It's very very suspicious to me.
Yeah. No, he's if he's not literally involved in Rosemary's Baby, Eyes Wide Shut, occult activity. I mean, Stanley
Right.
Kubrick had that book on the occult and made Eyes Wide Shut. And that's it is
I
what it
mean,
is. But
we can just talk about that for a second. The fact that his daughter, Scientologist, Tom
mhm,
Cruise, Nicole Kidman,
the- mhm.
you know, like coming out with that movie, dies mysteriously, you know, right after that movie ends. I mean, I don't like to
Who
talk
wait,
about
who died
conspiracy.
mysteriously? Who died mysteriously?
Well, not mysteriously, I should say, but I felt like Stanley Kubrick, like when I feel like
You're talking
how
about
should I say
Vivian?
this?
She's
It was
alive.
no. Stanley, like he died before, I
Oh,
think before
during the
Eyes Wide
making of
Shut.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. You
Mhm.
know, you
Mhm.
know, I mean, even going back as far as like Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee, you know, Bruce Lee coming forward and making all of the mafia and the Chinese mafia in Los Angeles upset. Supposedly they killed him.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's actually true. I mean,
I
who's to
don't know.
say a Scientologist? You know, it's just like it's fun to
I don't
talk
know.
about things like that. But anyway,
Yeah, I did the Kubrickon analysis where I kind of
it
discussed
was great. It was great.
Kubrick's all the stuff with Kubrick, but I think it's relevant. It's certainly relevant here because it sort of
Yeah.
exists in the same sort of sphere. It's clearly the movie is clearly a revelatory depiction of the rich and famous and what happens.
Right.
And I don't know if that's clear. I think it's part of the subtext of the movie,
I think you're right. Yeah.
but that is obviously again there are layers. There are layers of this and circles within
Right.
circles and I think that I'm not sure about the whole staff being involved. I don't know. I mean, it is creepy how the butler comes upstairs into the attic and he's standing there and he's like got the flashlight right and he's like, "What are you doing up here?" And like she's got the torch like explodes. I mean
Yeah.
that's sort of like in hereditary when she goes up in the attic and it's the same thing and you see the guy standing in the background. The
Oh
cult is
man.
standing in the
So
background.
when Ellen bursts in, you know, she hears the rats or whatever, and
Mhm,
she looks up at the door and she pulls it down, and you look inside
mhm,
and it's all dark. It's pitch
mhm,
black. You cannot see
yeah,
anything. Me and
yeah.
my buddies were like, "Don't go in there. Like, what are you doing?" Like, you hear
Right.
the noise
What are you
in this
doing?
old
Yeah, wait
house.
till
Why would
wait.
you go in there? Send the butler
Yeah,
up there. Don't go yourself.
yeah, yeah,
It's great, great scene. Great scene.
yeah, yeah. Why do it at night? Also,
Yeah.
send the butler. Wait till the daytime to check it out. Yeah, but
um, what was I gonna
yeah.
say?
So they bring the priest in, and the priest the priest tests her, right, because he sprinkles her with holy water, and then he later reveals that it was a ruse, that it wasn't holy water, which is
It's
to
just
cancel
tap
out
water.
any. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is to say that no, this didn't grounds for an exorcism, but his heart is telling him that no, this is something worse, and he wants
So
to.
what do you
Then
think
there's
that means, though? Like the fact that she reacted to the whole. Like, do you think that indicates that she's not possessed, or
no,
because
I
that
think
always
it
confused me?
no, I think it indicates that she is possessed because the demon wants him,
Mm, gotcha.
right, and
Okay.
and so because ultimately all of this is about like in prisoners, the demons are making a war with God, and
Mm,
they want to invert God's order. They want to destroy people's love and relationships. They want to make people doubt their faith, and ultimately, they want the priest, right?
mm,
Um, and they're doing this through the things that Burke is the activity Burke, I think, in the movie is already involved in, which is like demonic activity, literally and figuratively. Um,
yes.
is an attachment for this, and so
Yes.
the also the cop first of all, Lee J. Cobb is kind of doesn't really serve a purpose in this movie, but he's supposed to
Yeah.
be. He's one example. His name is Kinderman. He's Kinderman. He
Right.
means Kinder is child, right? And also he's a kind man. He is
He's the
he's the
best.
one.
I feel like he's one of the best unassuming detectives of all time, especially in the novel. He's
Well,
always
he's supposed to be
sniffling
a
and
kind of a
coughing.
father figure. He's supposed to be a
Right.
straight father figure that you latch onto in the movie, and you go, okay, here's one guy who's not creepy, right? The same
Yeah.
occurs with when they finally bring Max von Sydow in because the priest wants to do the exorcism, but of course they won't let him, and that's good because they need to bring in somebody with more experience. And they bring in Max von Sydow, and of course he's the one who was involved in the last one. So again, this is a continuing war. The demon recognizes him when he goes in, and he's got good advice he's training the other priest, but he eventually dies doing this,
Yep.
and
They
he's
both
and
do. Yeah.
Max von Sydow is very good in this movie. He's his what he says to the priest is don't listen, the demon's a liar, and he's casting the demon out of Reagan.
It's a great
But
line. He's like, Karis asks him. He says, "Do you want me to give you some background on the case?" And Marin just looks at him and he's like, "Why?
yeah, yeah, no, he doesn't
Why
need it.
do I don't need any background, bro. Like, I got this, man. I've done this before. Like, I've already been
Uh,
here.
well, it
It's like you said. The house represents a sort of like the brain of a person, and he's already
mhm.
inside that hellscape already before. So
Yeah, no,
it's crazy.
it's great. It's great because he doesn't need the background. He doesn't want the psychological background for what this character is enduring. He already knows that he's at war with the demon. He knows how to do the war, and he knows the language to use. He doesn't need the psychological. It's always going to be the same,
Yeah.
right? And so he
Right.
goes into it with a which in the movie he goes into it seemingly, with a pure heart, and uses the language of the ritual, right? Instead of the psychological back and forth that we see the other priest. Remember when he first meets her, he's like sitting on the bed talking, and then like the drawer comes out, right? And he says, do it again. He commands the demon to do
Right.
it again. And it's like, no, it's a vulgar display of power. Pantera. And he's not going to do it. But he's like going back and forth with this demon character in an exchange. And the priests, Marin's point is don't do. Also, there's, I can't neglect to mention that, Malachi Martin, how the book, how this is seemingly based on Malachi Martin.
Oh,
When
the actual exorcism of the young
yeah,
boy, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Windswept House, and it seems to be based on him, and I think they, whether they denied that or not, he has a lot to say about it, which I think is interesting. But
Hmm.
I think that Marin is supposed to be a kind of Malachi Martin figure here, or the younger guy is,
Can we
but
just talk for a second about the James Woods interpretation of that character in a scary movie? How great that opening scene is.
Well,
He goes in and says, "Father, bless this house." It's
yeah.
a great scene.
Well, I think that, the movie is rife for parody, obviously.
Right.
And it's kind of weird because people have gallows humor, and of course people are going to parody the movie with all the
Right.
grossness and the puking and the, pea soup grody-ness. But what I think that also does is it sort of denigrates the it's
Mm,
fine. It denigrates the original movie and the point
right.
that it's trying to make, right? Which is that this is a real
Yeah.
thing and it's very serious.
No,
And
of
and
course.
and it's especially horrible dealing with Reagan. And the other thing is that, Linda Blair was nominated for an Oscar for this movie. It was Best Supporting Actress. But what's really interesting about this, people might not know this, is that when they nominated her for the movie, they didn't realize that she's not the voice of the demon. They didn't use her voice. They used
Yes, I
another
heard about
actress.
that. And
And
the actress
so,
got very upset, didn't she?
well,
Right? Like in later
I don't know if she
years.
got upset. She didn't want credit for it, because of the subject
Mm,
matter. And then later, when it would won nomination, she wanted credit, but you can't retract an Oscar nomination.
right.
So
Okay,
she
that's
didn't
what
get
I'm
any credit
remembering.
for it. But that
Mhm.
meant that Linda Blair wouldn't win the Oscar, because now there's another actress
Um,
involved. But what I think is really interesting is that
mm.
when that actress, who also apparently was an alcoholic and did her role in this like extremely well. The sound in the movie is incredible. People were afraid. They were afraid listening to her talking.
Yeah.
And and that is supposed to tie in with the fact that, you know, you at some point, especially when the movie came out, you question whether you're watching a movie or whether this is real, whether it's based on reality,
It's so
whether it's
shot in that
real.
aspect ratio and the way that the palette is done, everything is in primary colors. It feels like a real, like when you're inside her room, like in that playroom area, you feel like you're in a real child's room. Like this could actually be, this actually is some place where a child plays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what's so scary about it. And
Yeah.
the bright textures. Uh,
And
and
look in the background in the playroom. I mean, she's too old to have a playroom like that, which is probably conveys the sense of,
mm,
the infantilization in the movie, but also,
she's 12 years old. So, and like, I mean,
well,
this is a
there's
little
a
bit,
picture of the big
you
bad
know,
wolf in the background, and it's like, who's the big
right.
bad wolf in this scene? Is it Burke, right? Is he
Mm,
coming to blow the house down, right?
mm.
And, and it's very weird. But also, the most interesting aspect of this is the subliminal imagery of Pazuzu, which occurs 3 times in the movie, right? Which is the demonic
Oh, with the
face of the demon.
yeah.
Yeah, and that was the CIA. That was CIA that did that. Jay's covered
So,
this.
okay, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I don't know, I never knew this until I researched this. But did you know that William Peter Blatty, what he did before he started writing?
Wasn't he intelligence?
Yeah, he was an
Yeah.
intelligence, and it was a
Mm,
specific subset of intelligence about it was the Department of the Defense, and it was all
mhm,
about essentially MK Ultra shit. That's
mhm.
essentially what he was doing. And
Yeah, yeah,
then he goes
inside.
forth and writes The Exorcist. The
Mhm,
Exorcist out, and after The Exorcist comes out, tons of people start filing in requesting exorcisms.
mhm.
It's like I wouldn't call it a cultural phenomena, but it's a thing that happened. It was pre-satanic panic of the 90s, but it was literally right after this came out, there was just this influx, you know, they didn't there wasn't really it was like in the book. They don't talk there was no
Well
exorcisms for thousands of years or whatever. And then after this book comes out, suddenly we need more exorcists. It's almost like a
well,
psyop in
that's
and of
because
itself.
That's because the point of the movie is with the subliminal imagery of Pazuzu is aesthetic terrorism. It's to see how far one
Mm,
can go with subliminal imagery in order to
mm,
terrify an audience. And you hear stories about people watching the movie and throwing up. A guy killed a guy, unalived himself, after the movie.
jeez.
Another lady passed out watching the movie and broke her jaw in the seat in front of her.
Then
I mean,
we could talk about Jeff.
that was purposeful. They did that purposefully, and that's the reason why the image is shown in there, and it's a subliminal image because it's supposed to be. It serves as 2 things. One is that the image is flashing in the mind of Reagan, right? She's seeing this demon
Right.
inside of her. Another is that, um, that we as the audience question what we see and whether what we see is real or not. And that puts us
Exactly.
into the movie within a movie within a movie. So it's very cleverly done, but also extremely it's sick. It's and like you said,
It's so
the end
crazy
of the
that
movie is great.
analysis. Yeah, that
Well, the
analysis
end of
that
the
you give is so like I don't see that often, but it's so true. But you see that in a lot of modern things. What was that? Not Asteroid City, the one with
Mhm.
Margot Robbie, where she plays the actress that we only see once. Where
It
at
is.
the same
It's an
time in
asteroid.
another movie she's playing Barbie. You know,
Yeah.
like that's so crazy that it's so ahead of its time.
Well, that's a
Freaking, I
classical
mean,
device. I mean, that they do that in Hamlet. It's also in the
mm,
Spanish Tragedy by Thomas Kidd. The Renaissance plays will do that, and oftentimes they'll do that. They'll have a play within the play because the play in the play will mirror the reality of what's happening on the outer edges,
mm.
so that the characters who have done the things in the life of the play are indicted by what they see within the play.
So, okay, I just want to go off topic for 1 second. I don't know if you've watched all of Twin Peaks or not, but have you seen Blue Velvet?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so you know how fuck Heineken. Anyway, so in Blue Velvet, you see Frank having the blue velvet in his mouth, and
Mm,
he's like this rambunctious guy. Well,
yeah.
in Twin Peaks, they're all watching this soap opera where one of the victims in the not in the movie or in the show, he has
Mm,
blue velvet in his mouth, and then
mhm.
there's us other character who's all like he's got a bandana and glasses, sort of this biker guy, or sort of Frank-esque character. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking like, wow, like David Lynch, man, like what a freaking master. I'll get that out of the way. I love David Lynch. We're definitely
Yeah.
going to do a David Lynch stream on this channel, so stay tuned to that. Anyway, that's completely
Blue
off
Velvet,
topic, but
the Blue Rose, Blue Velvet, the cafe, the thing, the performance aspect of the
right.
movie again is a kind of a movie within the movie or a play within the play. What's it called? Mulholland Drive is all about that.
Oh, I
It's
love that
supposed to
movie.
be it's a framed movie. We have a movie within the frames of the movie. So
Right,
we're watching actors uh recreate what they do in the movies as part of their
right.
life within the movie. But what that all that does is show the audience. It makes us question what we're really watching and whether we are in the movie, whether we're part of the movie.
That's,
And
I mean, not to say I'm Lynch, but that sort of reminds me of like Lost Highway and
Mhm.
how all of
Yeah.
the actors in those roles have played the same exact characters in other shows and television. You got
Mhm.
Patricia Arquette, Balthazar Getty, the gangster guy, Frank, or is it Frank Eddie, Mr. Eddie? All of those characters are from like other pieces of work, and they're
Mhm.
the same exact actors.
Yeah.
So that's like that meta. That's crazy, man.
Well,
Like
Lost Highway
amazing.
also is meta because they're filming. They're filming the family asleep in
Right.
bed.
The mystery man always has like a camera,
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
when we see him.
which is both blackmail, but also supposed to tell us that we are inside the character's dreams, but now that the world
Mm.
within the movie is a dream world, and we don't know how to get out of the labyrinth of the dream world. Just like Reagan can't get out
Oh
of the
man.
labyrinth. Reagan is lost inside her corpus, right? Her
Right.
personality has been taken over by this demon, and the demon is the demon is Legion, right? And that's why we see
Right.
help me written on her skin because that's Reagan on the inside, trying to get out, get back to
Oh, okay.
the center.
So the first time that we notice that there's something wrong with Reagan is when we find the mother gets a phone call in the middle of the night or in the early morning
Mhm,
because she's got to go to set. And she says, "Oh, what scene are we doing? Okay, I'll get ready." She looks over and Reagan is in the bed and she looks at her and she says, "What are you doing here?" Now, in the
mhm,
background of that shot, there is a black and white photograph of Reagan, right?
mhm.
And her
Yeah.
hands are like this, as if she's
Mhm,
in prayer, or if she's
mhm,
it's almost as she's banging against the glass trying to get
mhm.
out. And that was the first time I noticed that today, and I thought, holy goddamn shit, I can't believe that subtext exists, and I never noticed it
Okay.
before.
Well,
It's
yeah,
amazing.
also notice that Linda Blair is a real person, and
Right.
Linda Blair is playing the actress who's the daughter of the actress in the movie. Right. So
Yes.
So the question is, you know, it's bothersome because we're watching.
An
Okay,
actual person do this. Yeah. No,
yeah,
it's terrifying.
because we
It's
have to have
terrifying.
art. We're watching art, and we're watching a thing that, like you said, the end of the movie. We have a resolution at the end of the movie that's positive because the priest sacrifices himself for the child, and she
Right.
lives. Um, but the question is like, how much has it infected everyone watching it, and how much are we infected watching the movie?
Yeah.
It's a very, I mean,
Hmm.
it's a movie that is obviously incredibly powerful because of the subject matter, but it's very disturbing. And
I
especially
agree.
with what they did with it, how they latched onto this, how they did, a psyop, a literal CIA psyop with the movie, how Blatty has these connections. Malachi Martin's best friend was CIA. How they
It's
um
crazy. It's
where it
crazy once
ties
you
up.
if you watch the movie and then you find that out. It's like you can't help but like your mind explosion, complete
Mhm.
mind explosion at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's scary.
I mean, I didn't, you're also questioning all the other characters in the movie. You're thinking, the priest, at the end of the
Everyone
movie
is sus. Everyone is sus.
yeah, because the priest gets the medallion, right? And the medallion, I think it's who's on the medallion? Is it Saint Joseph? Protect us,
It is Joseph. Yeah, it is Saint
yeah,
Joseph.
but the way that he reacts when she walks into the party scene is also it's disturbing. You don't know how
Mm.
many people are involved with this thing, and I think that's the Mr. Terrible brought up the movie Cachet. Yeah, that's an excellent movie. It's a French movie. That
Okay,
also
I'll have to
deals with
check that out.
with the filming. And one other thing that Cachet brings to mind, and that Lost Highway brings to mind, is that there's also backmasking in the movie, and that the
Yeah.
when he records her talking and he says, "What language is this?" She's speaking Latin, and the guy says, "No, it's English," and it's backwards. So she's backmasking in the language of the demon. But that also is indicative of of the character Reagan wanting reversing. She's reversing, right? So
Right.
when she goes through her particular creeper trauma, she's playing back the things that happened to her.
Well,
And
Didn't
it makes no
Crowley
sense.
speak
Hold on.
backwards?
It makes no
Sorry, sorry.
sense. It's in nonsense land. And yeah,
Right.
this is Crowley. This is Crowleyan. This is a totally demonic. Walk backwards, speak backwards. That's absolutely Crowleyan. And I think that um, it's so cleverly done because it's such a small scene in the movie, but it also shows you something that continues to be used in movies, and that is an occult practice.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
What I was gonna say was there's that one shot where I don't know if it's Karis or the mother or whoever is looking at Reagan, and
Mhm,
you see the face of the demon, but
mhm.
then it's a double exposed shot, and you see another face, and the only way you'd be able to tell is there's a slight curvature of the eye that's separate, and it's almost
Yeah.
like you can see the personality splitting. Great shot. Another really good shot that well, let's just talk about the backward speaking for a second because there's one part where winding the tape, listening to the
Yeah, that's
recording that
really
he took of Reagan, and
mhm.
you see he's like in a library or a study, and there's this Russian type on the glass or in the
Cyrillic.
background.
Mhm.
Yeah, Cyrillic, and my buddy was like, why is there Russian? What is their Russian type doing on there? And I said, well, because he has to rewind the tape, play it backwards to understand what's really going on. And that kind of
Mhm.
reminded me of, Satanic Panic, Led Zeppelin, Crowley. That's kind of the bells that rung
I
when
didn't
I
notice
when
the
I thought of
Cyrillic.
that.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
notice
it's
that.
right. I mean, maybe it's just in the director's cut, but it is there when he's at the beginning of that segment
Hmm,
where he's in the study or library or something.
mhm.
Uh, let's see. I guess we could wind it down now. Is
Mhm.
there anything else you want to touch on before we close it down?
Yeah, I'd say that the other probably the most powerful shot in the movie is when Marin is confronting the demon and doing the actual exorcism, and the window opens, and we see in silhouette Pazuzu again appear in the window, and Reagan is the part where she's levitating. Marin is
Yeah.
saying that's the power of Christ compels you, and the demon is trying to. She's being sacrificed on an altar here. and
Right.
that she needs salvation. And it's also the same as when she was in the hospital. It's the same as when she was in the bed earlier. Um, and we see Pazuzu appear in the window like he's literally there, right? And
Right.
that's when that that's supposed to be reflective of at the beginning of the movie when he's on the two mounts and he's staring, he's in a battle with this demon. But I love the language of it, how he repeatedly says that it's not, he says it's not me. I'm just a poor sinner. It's not, I'm not. It's not me, but the power of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit compels you to leave. God in he says
Mm,
Christ in all of his majesty compels
right.
you. He said, get out. I cast you out. And it's a very powerful, well done movie. And I think that,
I agree.
even on the set, they wanted to bring somebody to exorcise the set. They ended up having a priest come and bless the set.
Oh, that could be
And
a whole nother video, dude. It's like all the shenanigans that went on behind the set,
well,
the supposed creeper
Burke,
that worked
yeah.
there.
Well, Burke died soon after this was over. I think he
Hmm.
fell. I think he fell just like in the movie.
I believe one of Max von Sydow's relatives got into a terrible accident.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, there was a supposed creeper in the
Yeah, it's a
handling of
Hollywood
Linda
set,
Blair.
so you would expect it.
Yeah, it's terrible, terrible.
Terrible. Mhm.
Well, what I will say now is, first of all, BLA, thank you so much for being here, and I
Hey,
really
thanks
had
for
a good
having me, man.
time.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I hope we can do it again. Uh, I personally really enjoy the horror genre, but I really
Mhm.
enjoy all sorts of types of film and novels. Right now,
Mhm.
what I'm reading a couple different books. I just got the complete Kafka, which I'm gonna tear into, which I'm looking forward to. And then I also just finished this book. This is called Bear. I don't know if you've ever
Mm-mm.
seen this. It's about
Is it?
Owsley Stanley the
Oh,
third.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I just
Oh,
finished that.
Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like the Grateful Dead, if you're interested in like hippie culture, if you're interested in like the the beginnings of the acid culture, check me out on that stream. BLA, what's coming up with you next? I saw you're gonna do Suctry or is it Suctry or
All the Pretty Horses, Cormac
All the
McCarthy.
Pretty
Yeah.
Horses?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll
Yeah.
say that the best movie that probably dramatizes Owsley is actually it's kind of a parallel, and that
Okay.
is the Nick Cage movie Mandy, which has an Owsley character in it,
Oh,
which
I'll have
probably
to
gets
watch
to
that.
the truth of Owsley more than other movies do.
What a weird character, dude. Like I thought I knew stuff about him, and then I read this book and I was like, oh, whoa,
Yeah.
hold on. There's some
CIA.
stuff going on here.
Yeah, more CIA shenanigans.
So
But yeah, coming up,
anyway.
I've got coming up, I think tomorrow night or Tuesday night, I'll be doing Cormac. I'll be going back to my fourth Cormac McCarthy analysis. I'll be doing
All
All the Pretty
right. I
Horses.
will be there, man.
And also check me out on I was on TNT Radio on Friday. Check me out on there. Check me out on YouTube if you want to sponsor stream. Everybody knows how to do that. You can go over to the links. I've got a sponsor stream coming up on Kafka on the trial.
No
Uh,
way. Okay. Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect,
everybody make
perfect,
sure to
perfect.
give this stream a like and share. And thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Hey, BLA, you're the best. Like and subscribe and leave a comment on the post. Everyone who joined the chat today, you guys are awesome. Everyone from BLA stream. And if you're from somewhere else, thank you guys so much for coming in. All the homies. Shouts out to my grandma. Love you, grandma. Shouts out to Josh and all the rest of you. Cameron, Abu, you guys are awesome for coming in today. And once more, BLA, thanks again, man. You're the fucking
Thanks,
best,
man.
dude. Thanks again.
Appreciate it.
All right. Y'all have a
Peace.
wonderful night. Peace.
Peace.